There we go.
Okay.
All right. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Drop in where you're joining us from. We are all over the place here. This is a truly global panel.
Yeah, we've covered some geography.
Yeah.
We've pretty much got the whole eastern half of the Atlantic covered. So it'll be the eastern half of the US and the Atlantic.
Yeah. I'd like some points for my Canadian citizenship. So maybe if there's some Canadians.
Yeah.
I was
on this call.
a question about Thanksgiving, but I realized that I'm the only one here.
No, that's not true. I'm flying back for Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Oh, there you go.
That's smart. Getting ahead of the big crowds.
Oh, Jody's from Ottawa. Love it. PEI. Look at all this. We got some
awesome
niche Canada. I love it.
Yeah. If there are any Caribbean folks in the house, please say so.
Ooh, Belize. That's cool.
Yay. Awesome. There was an argument the other day as to if whether Belize was Caribbean.
I was going to ask you that.
It was a big argument online, but whatever.
Columbus, Ohio.
Lots of love.
My favorite American city.
Hello, Manchester.
All right.
Poland. We're covering some ground here. Just never mind the four of us. Everybody else who's.
Yes, Tiffany, you saw it too. I think it probably made national headlines in Belize.
Oh my goodness.
It's crazy.
A lot of new names here too, which is great.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
It would be cool. You know, it would be a fun Zoom functionality. If anyone here works for Zoom, please put in this suggestion box. If as people were coming in, you could have a map that had little dots that lit up to see where people were from.
See how populated the map is from the people.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be a cool group thing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I mean, we were excited about this.
I know. Look at what Jamie and I discovered. Oh, mine's not doing it now. I got to keep it up here. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. Woohoo! That is so
Facts
cool.
for everybody else joining. You can do it at your next meeting.
Yeah. This also works in case anyone.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That one's great.
The things that excite us online.
Oh my goodness. Look at where we're coming from to where we are now, you know.
It's true.
Thanks to the pandemic, I guess.
So for anyone, I think I see Teresa asking, I don't know entirely how to set it up, but I do know it's a Mac OS update.
Oh.
So it works in Zoom, it works in FaceTime calls.
Okay. So if you're not on Mac, probably not.
Okay. Let's see this.
Germany, yay.
Oh my gosh, Megan. What a great tip.
Now we're all learning from each other.
Yeah.
That's great.
Never mind the topic at hand. What other cool things can we do? Metal hands? Is that like this? Like, is that metal hand?
Oh,
this is wild.
Okay.
Oh, this is so cool. I'm feeling left out right about now. All the Apple folks.
Oh, this is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Stick with us for more Zoom tips. Oh my goodness.
And suggestions.
Yeah.
Ideas. Yeah. This session is about Zoom effects.
Yeah, exactly. You all thought you were joining for an internal comms conversation, and you're not.
Gotcha.
Starting off practical, you know?
Yeah.
Good. Excellent.
San Diego. Hey, Alex.
What do we think? Are we ready to roll it on?
We got some visitors. Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Gotta put in a plug for the family business here.
Incredible.
And if anybody's visiting Jamaica soon, drop that in the chat too. Our winter tourist season is actually starting in December. So we usually get very busy that time of
Fun.
year.
Our
Mhm.
winter tourist season started in October.
Wow. Wow.
There you go.
Awesome.
There you go. You've got
Oh,
Jamaican tourists too.
Cuba is, oh, Jamaica, January 8th, Tiffany. Cuba is amazing. Cuba is amazing. And if you can do Old Havana, beautiful, beautiful. Lots of history and culture.
Why don't we get started with some intros since we've got quite a
Yeah.
few people going on here, and now
Yeah.
we're talking about where we're all from, and I feel like maybe people don't know these things.
Yeah.
Mike, since you're promoting your Iceland hometown, do you want to start off with an introduction?
Sure. Well, as you can probably tell by the accent, Reykjavik isn't my hometown, but I've been based here for the last 3 years. I'm a Chicago product, and I've been working in internal comms for the last 25 years. Came over to Europe about that time to go to business school at London Business School. And I've worked in house, I've been a contractor, and for the last 6 years, I've had my own consultancy and also have been blogging under the label Changing the Terms. Um, Main thing I'm known for at the moment is that I'm the founder of We Lead Comms, which has been very generously sponsored by Workshop over the last 6 months. I'm very grateful for that. And really the topic of communication leadership ties into the whole We Lead Comms conversation, because We Lead Comms is really about celebrating the initiative, courage, and leadership that really make up communication leadership as we see it.
Wonderful. We also noticed before everyone jumped on, Jamie pointed out that the last time the four of us were in the same room together was last year at IABC World Conference in Toronto. So
Woohoo.
amazing. Carrie Ann, you want to do an intro for yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everybody. I am Carrie Ann Stimson. And of course, you've picked up a little bit of a different accent because I am Jamaican. So I'm coming to you now from my hometown of Kingston in Jamaica. And I'm very happy to be here. So confession, I am not an internal comms professional, right? So show me some extra love, but I am a marketer. So I feel like we're very close cousins at minimum, or certainly close, half siblings. How about that? But really and truly, I mean, I'm the CMO. I'm a chief marketing officer at a financial group based in Jamaica. We have operations across the Caribbean. But one of the main reasons why I'm here is that I'm the producer and host. I'm an independent podcaster sponsored by Workshop. And my podcast is the Internal Marketing Podcast. I'm in my 4th season. And that's why I'm connected to these folks, in the sense that while internal marketing and internal comms are not exactly the same thing, what is for sure is that you can't do internal marketing, which is really engaging and empowering employees in the mission, the vision, the purpose of the brand so that they can be advocates externally of the brand. We can't do that without a strong, solid internal comms partnership and execution. So I'm happy to be here to have this conversation. And yeah, great to see you guys virtually again, even though we're not in Toronto over drinks, but hey, it's going to be a fun time just the same.
The next best thing. And Carrie Ann, you've got
Cara.
subscribers on your
Hey, Cara.
all your fan club is showing up.
Hey,
I love
Cara.
it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And on the marketing train, let's stay there. Jamie Bell is here with us as well.
Woohoo!
Thankfully, since Workshop is hosting this whole shebang.
Yes, yes. Yep. I'm Jamie Bell. I'm the VP of Marketing at Workshop. We are an email platform for internal communications. And I am just happy to bring my most confident communications friends together for this panel. So I'm excited to get into it.
This is going to be a great topic. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Kristen Hancock. I run Ecology, which is a community for internal communicators. And I am apparently wrangling this panel. And so welcome aboard to everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Workshop's been a wonderful supporter of the internal communications industry. I know many of you in the comments have already noticed Carrie Ann's podcast, which is a phenomenal resource for all of us. And the We Lead Comms community is also a phenomenal resource. So we are fortunate in our industry to have a lot of support, a lot of resources, and a lot of really wonderful people who are always happy to help out. That's what I was going to say. Or happy to help out. So, okay, here's the funny thing. There's leading up to this, as anyone knows, if you've been part of like a panel discussion or a conference of any type, there's often some sort of Google Doc that starts the conversations. And in this Google Doc, people will put like, okay, let's make sure we talk about this. And here's some questions we can ask and all that kind of fun stuff. So I have a structure for this conversation. I'm also confident we may not need one. So if you have questions for the folks on the screen here, please feel free to use the chat. Or Jamie, would you rather people use Q&A? Does it matter to you what people use? Is it easier?
No, not really, but the Q&A is easier for us to spot if the chat
Got
gets
it. All right, so let's try and channel our communications like we're all good at doing. If you have a question that you would like a response to, please use the Q&A function. Otherwise, light up the chat. I also want to let everyone know Mike has his chat settings set to panelists only, so his responses to your questions have not shown up in the chat. So he is safe in Iceland is the first important thing. And secondly, he's going to re-put the link to the Iceland tourism company that he wants to put in there. Anyway, that's my first housekeeping tip.
Thank you for that.
You are most welcome. I also, now I don't know if this is going to work. Let me see if I can share. Oh, here we go. Copy link to post. I'm going to put in this chat leading up to, here we go. Here's a link to LinkedIn. This is a poll that Mike put out through his We Lead Comms community that asked folks leading up to this webinar, which of these is the most important element of communications leadership? I'm going to let people go to that poll if you want. If you click an item, it'll show you what the results are. A little spoiler alert. Of the four were courage, initiative, leadership, and executional excellence, which is a mouthful. I want to know, I'll start with Mike. Were you surprised at the results of that? There's a little spoiler alert here. At this point, courage is leading. It's very fitting. Are you surprised by this, Mike?
No, for two reasons. One is that, courage is definitely a key element of leadership, because if you're not being courageous, you're not really leading. At best, you're following. At best, you're managing. At best, you're, at most shepherding people rather than leading people. But the other thing was that I issued this quick poll right after doing a 30-second video trying to define courage. So there was a certain bias that I baked into the process. I certainly have a preference for courage, but I also have a preference for initiative as well.
Carrie Ann, did you vote, and what did you vote for?
Well, to be honest with you, I voted for courage as well.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say it was necessarily because I felt it was applicable to my situation. I voted for it because I felt that that's probably what a lot of people were experiencing, because I had the opportunity to connect and dialogue with a few folks who reached out and said, hey, I saw the webinar and I'm going to be joining in, and this is why I'm going to be joining in. These are the questions I have, or these are the problems I want to solve for. And courage was a theme that just kept coming out. So I said, what would happen if I just tap courage just to also see what the other responses were, because that's how LinkedIn works. And there it was. It was just as popular as it was for the folks who reached out.
That's awesome. I will disclose I also voted for courage. Jamie, did you vote?
I did vote, but I didn't vote for courage.
Do tell.
I voted for initiative.
Okay.
Which
do you want to defend your stance, Jamie?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's closely tied, but I feel like a lot of what can hold you back is just not getting started, right? So I think just getting, having the courage to start is almost like just what the definition of initiative might be. So that's kind of where I landed on that. So I think it's really neat, but I do think you can kind of, fitting in with the theme of what we're talking about today, positioning yourself as like a strategic partner to the business. Yep. A lot of that is just you kind of taking a little bit more initiative and, not waiting necessarily for like requests or things to come to you.
Yep. There's you've got some support in the chat, by the way. Would love to know what did you vote for people who voted on this. Let us know in the chat what you voted for. There is a great quote that I want to make sure I do not put on the wrong person. And I want to say it was Bill Marriott, but I'm not going to quote. But the quote is err on the side of taking action. So that fits in with your initiative, right? Taking action, getting things done. Oh, executional excellence. Okay. All right. People. Now, here's the reality of this poll. Mike, I say this with love. You could defend any of them, really, right? There's a case.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a case to be made for any one of those 4 items in that poll. And so that's some of what we're going to talk about today. I think the first thing, let's start off with this, because there's all kinds of meat in this conversation about being a confident communicator. Do we think, I'm going to just kick it off with an uncomfortable question. Do we think that our industry, maybe it's broadly communications, but I am going to specifically say internal communications. Do we think we have a confidence problem? Yeah, okay, Mike's okay. All right, that's my take too. Here, my hot take, maybe it's not a hot take, is if you are uncovering a confidence challenge for yourself at work, it's deeper rooted than that. And so the only tip I'm going to give today is find yourself a coach, a mentor, and or a therapist, because that's going to be the most helpful way that you help gain confidence. Anyway,
well, I would.
Oh, are you going to disagree? Yes.
I would add something else to the list.
Please.
Mean, when I started out in internal comms, I had gone to business school and I graduated from business school, and I was also dealing with some very difficult personal stuff. I was going through a divorce, and one of my mentors at work recommended a course called the Landmark Forum, which was a 3-day course. And what I saw during the course was a guy get up to the front of the course and start talking about his ex-wife and using the exact same words that I used. And then I realized he was asked, how long had he been divorced? 18 years. And I realized in that moment, I could do something right then and there. And in that process, I actually restored my confidence to a level that, I've never really looked back on.
Do we think, so Carrie Ann, I'll have you chime in. Do we think that when folks are struggling with confidence in the workplace, that there is deeper work to do?
Deeper work personally. Well, I think that's part of the reason, but I think also we can't discount the fact that the work environment that person has to operate in is also very, very important. I always like to go back to conversations around things like imposter syndrome, where people who struggle with imposter syndrome struggle with using their voices. They don't believe that they have the right to be there or do something in spite of whatever successes they would have experienced before. And what people always forget is, well, does the work environment cause a feeling of imposter syndrome in its employees? Are you giving your employees a voice? Are they feeling valued? Are they feeling heard? And so whenever you're looking at your own situation, if you don't feel confident, maybe there's something in your environment that's feeding that. And if you can't impact your environment to change that, then maybe you need to change your environment, and you'd be surprised about what that can do to your confidence. So that would be my addition to that.
I think that's a great, yeah. The topic of imposter syndrome seems to come up a lot in our industry. I'm going to challenge it in a loving way, not to say that if you feel you have imposter syndrome, great. What I want to share is that the person who created the term imposter syndrome wishes they never had, because it is used most often with women and women of color.
That's right.
It implies that it's our fault. Like, oh, I have imposter syndrome. I have to fix this. And to Carrie Ann's point, there are all kinds of reasons why you may feel insecure or not confident or not psychologically safe at work. I'm putting an article in the chat from Harvard Business Review that's called "Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome." My plea to all of you is stop using the word imposter syndrome.
And I'm going to give a spoiler alert, since these guys are here in this webinar. I have an interview with one of the co-authors of that
Oh
article
my gosh.
coming up in about a month, in terms of the schedule about this very topic. So it's going to be awesome.
And I see that Daya or Daya, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, you have also put the same article. All right, we're all on the same page. I love it.
There we
more
go.
imposter syndrome. No more imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the function of communicators as leaders, because that's the entire purpose of this conversation. But one of the things I want to touch on first, and I would love your opinion on, actually, Jamie, I'd like to start with you, because in your role at Workshop as a software platform, you're working with communicators and likely HR and IT as well. And so we're often lamenting about communicators not having leadership roles or not being in leadership roles. There's also a place for task doers, right? Like, is part of it just recognizing that maybe you don't want or need to be a communications leader? Maybe that's not a role that you need to have. Is that an uncomfortable conversation? Do you see that at all, Jamie?
I mean, I think the definition of a leader definitely doesn't always need to be like a people manager or a strategic partner or like things on that level. Like, you could be a leader in that you're putting together like the most like on brand internal comms or the most effective internal comms. Like, you could have kind of your own like well-developed skill set, and you could be the go-to on those like specific topics, as opposed to like, I think how we typically hear it in internal communications is like the seat at the table next to the CEO. You know, it's not always like, that's not going to be the most perfect picture. And maybe that isn't where you want to be. Like, that's a very high pressure environment for sure. And it might not be best suited for everyone. If that is something that you're goaling towards, I think there are some practical things that you can do to kind of get there. But yeah, I mean, I think the figuring out your skill set and where you want to develop kind of those leadership qualities, or where you want to kind of do your best work is an important sort of part of this, and key to building confidence, right? Like, the more you kind of focus on those specific skill sets, the more you're going to sort of build up your confidence in them too, and be able to say like, you know, I think we should do it this way.
Yep. It's knowing yourself, right? Self-awareness and knowing what your strengths are, what energizes you. And for a lot of people, if you love getting in there and digging into those tasks, we love that. Oh, I want to see if Zoom's going to give me the thumbs up thing when I do that. Yay, there we go. Kara and Christina are in the chat saying that they're like the tactical doers, getting ish done. I don't want to swear on this webinar because it's not my webinar. Okay, so now on that note though, where is the disconnect, Mike? I'll start with you. Where is the disconnect that there is such a vibe in the internal comms world of people who are like, I am not seen as a leader. I'm not at some magical table that we think exists. Like, where is this disconnect and why is this happening in our industry? It's a $1 million question.
It's a $1 million question with a number of answers. I think the core answer is that we have a very restrictive and very hierarchical definition of leadership that we need to throw into the bin as quickly as possible. There's this idea that you're not a leader unless you've got a title or unless you've got a team under you. That is absolute total bollocks. I'm going to swear on this seminar. Absolute bollocks. The reality is that as a leader, my view of leadership is somebody who can take ownership of an outcome and have influence on the outcome. And as communication professionals, we can do that with every single thing we do, whether it's tactical implementation, whether it's copy editing, or whether it's standing in front of 500 people and saying this is the future of the organization.
Maybe a better word is influence in some cases.
Well, influence is a form of leadership. But, you know, I would invite internal communication professionals to consider that we have a finger on the wheel, that what we do actually influence, you know, it actually changes the trajectory of the stuff that we're doing in the organizations that we work in, whether it's editing, whether it's speaking, whether it's collaborating, whether it's just simply introducing the right people to the right people in the organization. We are people who can change the trajectory of our organizations. And so when I talk about the combination of courage, initiative, and leadership as being the core disciplines of communication leadership, any one of these is a leadership discipline. And by leadership, I mean the conscious ownership of the outcomes that we're working towards.
Carrie Ann, I want to hear your thoughts on this on the, I mean, the concept of leadership in general versus the title. And then we've also got a couple of questions that I want to answer after this.
Yeah, I mean, I just love Mike's point, in terms of the definition of what people see leadership as. It's at a certain level in the organization, and you have a lot of folks under you reporting to you, and that makes you a leader. But at the end of the day, I think what is happening, and I mean, as a marketer too, we feel the same kind of pain in a lot of companies, where I think there's a natural discounting and devaluation of the internal comms role in much the same way I experience it as a marketer in a lot of companies still, and Jamie's nodding her head, marketing is the arts and crafts department, right? And so we don't always get the love and respect that we deserve. And when that happens, it's like, well, why aren't we getting a seat at certain tables? Why aren't we a part of certain conversations? But again, back to Mike's point, I think there's an opportunity for us to claim that power by creating tables where we invite particular leaders and subject matter experts and business owners and opinion leaders to influence and see, or certainly see how we can influence and show how we can demonstrate impact of the outcomes and objectives that they're trying to drive and connect the dots for them. And I think that there's an opportunity for us as communicators all around to do that.
Can I do this and say, build your own table? Yeah.
Or just bring a folding chair.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Crash the party.
I end up via my husband ending up watching an obscene amount of sports in America, including basketball. And one of the funniest, it's not funny if you love basketball, but if you watch the NBA or college basketball, when they need to have like a team meeting, I don't think they call it that, someone literally runs out with a folding chair and then they all sit around and they have like this little like whiteboard and they chat. It's like, then create your own little timeout, right? Like I would love if a communications person had their own folding chair in a meeting. That would make my day. Okay, let's get to a couple of questions. First question. This person would love insight on how to respond and take action when people question your strategy, yet they keep calling you the expert in your role. So how do you keep your confidence and be decisive, but also take into consideration their pushback? It's a loaded question. So they're being acknowledged as the expert in their role, but someone's constantly questioning, like, well, really, is that the right strategy? That's what I get from it.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts are like trying to figure out like the motivation, or if they're questioning your strategy yet calling you the expert in your role, and you think with the expert in your role comments, they're being really like authentic, they really mean that. But then, behind closed doors or in other rooms, they're being like, hey, is that the right thing? I mean, I feel like that might be coming from like a genuine place. Like they just want to know more. Maybe you just need to give them a kind of more information about why you made the decision you made. And, just purely questioning a strategy I don't necessarily see that as a strong negative, like one of the worst things for me is to be the only marketer in the room and not have anyone to bounce ideas off of, anyone to give feedback on, like even the four of us were like, oh, are you going to say a different answer? That's amazing. Like, that's exciting. Otherwise it's just me like talking to a wall,
Yeah,
so
fair.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of matters where it feels like it's coming from. If you feel like they're being sarcastic about calling you the expert in your role or something like that, then there's a little bit more layers to that, I would think. But I think if it's super repetitive or something, yeah, I understand. But if it's just like every now and then they're digging, they want to know a little bit more, maybe it's just curiosity. Maybe they're coming from a genuinely interested.
Part of it too is that if it's one person who's continually doing this, you don't have to be your only advocate. usually when you're dealing with leaders, you're usually dealing with a group of leaders. And there will be some who are more favorably disposed to who you are or what you have to offer them, that once you can get them on board, then you can get them to engage these other leaders, perhaps on a more peer-to-peer basis, to either elicit what the person's real objection is, or to get that person, reoriented and realigned with, the overall intention of you to actually help the organization move forward. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go into these battles alone. There's usually no need to. But the other thing that you mentioned, Jamie, and it's peripheral, but I think it's also core to this, is that probably the biggest problem that we as particularly IC folk and even as communication leaders face in general is professional isolation, particularly in house.
Right.
Very
Mhm.
rarely do you have an internal communication pro who's got a group of other internal comms pros within the organization to bounce ideas off of, check references, and really align on stuff. And really, what's great about the stuff that each of us on this call has built up a community of communication folks who have the ability to engage with each other. My invitation is treat these people like the network you don't have in your office.
Yeah. Could I jump into Kristen, because
Always.
just this question, it kind of to me drives to the heart of whenever I get that kind of question as well, because hey, I'm in the arts and crafts director, is what I find is that there's not usually alignment about what defines success, right?
Mm.
Or what's the measure that we're agreeing to achieve this goal, right? Because when you don't have those definitions set out, then success is left up to interpretation. Whether something works or has an impact is left up to subjective interpretation of whether or not it was the best course of action to take in the first place. So if as communications professionals, and even for any marketers out there listening, say hey in the chat, if we can define with the business owners, with the CEO, the CFO, and all the other leaders who we have to engage with, if we're clear about what are the measures of success, make them as specific and as tangible and as measurable as possible, then that's where we can get to, where it's no longer about questioning whether I think this is the right thing to do, or are you sure it's the best route? We are all aligned around something that's measurable and
And
specific.
Carrie Ann, I'd like to build on that. When you've got
Sure.
inconsistency in the definition of success, what you have is individuals having their own definition of what success is. And so
Yes.
rather than having alignment and a common view of success, it's actually creating competition between the individuals for to get their own success criteria met. In reality, for example, there's this idea that middle managers are the answer to all internal comms problems. The problem is they each have their own KPIs, they each have their own definition of success, and they're going to do what furthers their own agenda rather than the business's agenda if that's not clear. So, it's not necessarily doing anybody any favors to let people have their own interpretations of this stuff. It's really, getting alignment and getting clarity about where the win
Mhm.
and we can play a huge role in this because we see a lot further, and we have a much more 360-degree view of the business than most functional or managerial folks will ever have.
And if you'd like to encourage your leaders or your organization to have a defined view of success, great opportunity for you to lead that cause.
That's
Great
right.
opportunity
Initiative.
for you to build your own table and
Woo-hoo.
invite people to the meeting. Hey, I'm hosting a meeting and we're going to define what success looks like for this particular project. How cool would that be? That's a great opportunity for you to flex a leadership muscle. I don't care what
Absolutely.
position you're in, like how high up in seniority or whatever it is. Couple of questions. So there's a question here about how do you combat that leadership hierarchy view if that's something you're coming up against? So if you're in, let's say you're in an organization, I'll add my own little flavor, I guess, to this, but feel free if you were all these questions are anonymous, so I can't see who asked it, but feel free to pipe in if this was yours. If you are at a pretty bureaucratic organization that has very structured hierarchy and leadership, what are some very tangible ways? Let's give people some real clear takeaways. What are some very tangible ways that you can step into leadership comms roles or have some influence in your role within that kind of bureaucratic structure?
I want to build on a point that Mike made earlier that I think applies here as well is who are the opinion leaders of the organization? And you partner with them to help get you in the room. And in addition to opinion leaders, I'd add to that sponsors as well. If you can have a sponsor who can be also an opinion leader or even just someone with a tremendous amount of influence simply by virtue of the role that they occupy. But if you have a sponsor who can call your name when you're not in the room, who can make sure that you're at the table, even with a folding chair, to be a part of certain conversations because they've made the doorway clear for that to happen. For me, that's a really surefire way to get that going.
And let me add that it's great to have a sponsor who isn't your boss,
Right.
because that way at the very, if you've got a supportive boss, that means you've got two voices in the room. And if you have an unsupportive boss, you have at least somebody in the room who's got your back and who sees the value that you can add. Now, one other thing that I would add to this is if you're in a hierarchical and a hierarchical organization and in a highly executional role, one of the challenges you're going to have is most of the time you're going to feel overworked. If you want to transcend that, the bitter medicine is you got to have to do everything that they ask you to do as well as you do it, and then find that extra 10% that will say, okay, I can do this. And so you can get them to see that your value is not just simply the quantity of execution you do, which you have to manage until they trust you to do something else, but then give you the opportunity to actually say, I can do this in addition. And what happens is if you succeed, and I've tried this a few times, I've failed as many times as I've succeeded. But when I've succeeded, not only did I build my credibility up to be able to do that, I was able to outsource a lot of that other work.
And I think
So
that the practical like side of like getting into the room with leadership is actually through leadership communication, like campaigns. Like one of the first things that we recommend for anyone who's onboarding with workshop is like, if you're getting a few campaigns in here, one of the first ones you should look at is your CEO communications, like that weekly CEO letter or monthly or whatever. Put that into our email platform. You are then able the very next time to come back and say, here are the statistics, like here is exactly how people are engaging with your communications, which they didn't have before. And all of a sudden you're like, you are coming to the table, giving them something that's of value to them in their specific role. You could do that with any manager, or like, what a great thing to be able to do with like a new leader in the organization who's like jumping into a huge company, needs to find ways to be visible and find their voice in that organization. I mean, you're the go-to for that. So I think practically looking at like using yourself as a strategic partner for leadership communications and building those things up is a great way for you to kind of get in that room.
We could all probably take a page from the marketer's handbook, Carrie Ann, with when it comes to how we are planning our days and our time. And to, Mike just mentioned this just now about looking at tasks and workload and what you're responsible for. And I think there are often, it sounds like in the chat and other conversations we've all had, that there's the belief that if you are doing tasks, that you are not leading. And I don't know if that is the case, or at least I think there's a way that you can be executing and also owning a leadership role, because as we've talked about earlier in this webinar, many internal communicators are the only people in their company who are in internal comms. Mike Klein has his hand up.
yes, I have my hand up because it ties into something that I talk about a lot, and that is the idea that, when we're writing stuff, we're not just editing copy, we're actually editing the organization. And when I give people advice about their role as writers, particularly if you're ghostwriting for a leader, but even if you're just speaking more generally about a topic in the organization, instead of writing what you think the person would say, what you think the person will approve, I encourage people to say, what would they do if they had that person's job? Knowing what you know, knowing what you know about the organization's ambition, its culture, what have you. What would you say if you were the CEO giving the CEO speech? My dictum is, draft ambitiously and be very gracious in accepting the editorial feedback you get, because that way you're actually leading, you're actually going beyond where that leader would go, and then either they follow you, so you're actually leading the leader in that perspective, or they're taking ownership and saying, I think this is too ambitious, or I like your style but not right now.
This ties into a question that I've got that's hanging out here, waiting for just the right moment, and Mike Klein delivered it. It's about how do you deal with pushing back to your leadership team or senior leadership regarding employee comms when now this is how this is worded. When the communicators know the employee base better and leadership can miss the mark on messaging. So where is that balance of, guess what? Sometimes leadership makes like formal leadership makes the call, and also pushing back. Where is that balance? And Carrie Ann, I'd love your take too, just because I know that this is a universal challenge. This is not unique to communications. This is a challenge in every industry where you are going to have a person or a group of people who outrank you, who are going to say, that's not the way that we want this done. And there's always going to be this give and take. So I don't know, Carrie Ann, if you want to kick it off from some of your experience.
I mean, in my experience, what I've found is that there really is an opportunity for you to explore what I guess works and what doesn't work in your particular organization. It's never about a cookie cutter approach from where I sit. I mean, I wanted to harken back to something that Mike would have shared as well, is that I'm sorry, guys, I just got a message on my phone, and it's a personal matter that's a bit of an emergency. So, Kristen, could I ask you to just hop to the next point?
We absolutely can.
I'm so
I guarantee.
sorry.
No,
I'm
take
just
your
gonna
time, Carrie Ann.
mute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
take your time. You're fine.
thank you. I'm
You
sorry.
can leave us for a minute and come back. Mike, Mike and Jamie. I mean, Jamie, you're in marketing as well, though no different than Carrie Ann. I guarantee you there have been times in your career to date where you've disagreed with the direction that leadership wants your role or your team to go.
Right.
Where's that balance?
I mean, I think for starters, I feel like there are certain things you kind of have to check in with yourself a little bit, right? Like, I don't like the phrase like the hill I'm going to die on, but I use it all the time because I need an alternative. So can the can the chat source me an alternative to that phrase, please? But you kind of have to check in with yourself and be like, is this where I'm digging my heels in, or am I okay, like kind of finding a compromise here? I think you kind of have to know that going into it. And then how much information can you bring to the table of things past? Like, can you reference something similar or bring up other like campaigns, kind of like I talked about, where you can point to like differences in like how those performed and be able to kind of support what you're asking. But aside from that, I love whoever asked that question because you asked it with a ton of confidence. Like, you are someone that knows your employee base in a much different way than that leader does. And I think, standing up for yourself in that way is very, very cool and very unique. It's not the kind of imposter syndrome that we've been talking about. I love that confidence from a communications professional to be able to say, like, no one else in or outside this organization knows the organization quite like I do. And being able to bring any insights, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, to kind of support the way you would like to approach it, or use the company values, just throw those back at them. I do that all the time.
I like that phrase. Quote. Sorry, I'm gonna let you jump in, Mike. But just to quote, there's one phrase that we could all take away from this. No one else knows our employee base like I do, or like my team does, or our team does. That's a great, confident, assertive, but not offensive phrase. I don't think it's offensive to use in a meeting where you disagree with leadership. So we can quote that and take it to the bank. Well, Mike.
I would be a little bit cautious about that for a couple of reasons. First, the employee base is an important dimension, and representing the employee base is an important dimension of what we do. But we can't forget who we work for. You know, when we start to act as if we work for the employees, we actually distance ourselves from the mission of the organization. The mission of the organization, ultimately, if it's a functional organization, is to win by satisfying all of its stakeholders in the most optimal way. And if you're only advocating for employees, you're actually distancing yourself from the purpose of the organization, and you'll get caught out for it. So that's one bit of one bit of caution. The second bit is simply being able to say you know it without having data to back it up is also a risky position to be in.
Well, let's
Basically,
assume we do have data, because I agree. To say you know the better than anyone else and not have data, problematic. Don't do that, folks. Do not do
right,
that.
because here's what happens when communicators come up against managers. It's like rock, scissors, paper. The manager is always the scissors, and without data, you're always the paper. The manager will win on all those disputes. When you've got the data, you become a rock and you can break that scissors. So the key thing is, if you're going to go into battle with your leadership on a matter of, facts versus opinion, you need to be the one who's got the facts.
And that's a fact, everyone. Okay, I love there's lots of great questions here. It's interesting to me that, and again, I don't think this is a uniquely comms problem. I think this is probably true for accountants. It's probably true for IT people. There is a sense of, I get this sense with communicators that we're often approaching things as a battle before we've even had conversations. And sometimes I fear that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If we're going into a meeting with this expectation of like, no one's going to listen to me, they're all going to question what I'm doing, and maybe that has been your experience, but there has to be a better way to approach working together with our, I guess, allies, maybe team members in the organization. And I think a lot of that comes down to confidence and self-awareness as a communication professional. And Mike, to your point, there's the values of the organization and there's what we're doing in comms, and those need to be aligned. But also, unless you are the CEO, even if you're the CEO, you're probably responsible to a board.
Oh,
like there's there's
everybody's
always
got a boss.
Yes, everyone has a boss. And so there are times, this is a brief story, the last corporate job I had, my boss and I, at one point, one of the bosses I had, we had a great relationship, and we got to a point in our relationship where I could say to him, can you just be honest with me? If there is zero chance of me changing this direction from the CEO, just tell me up front so I don't have to fight for it. So there were times where he would be very honest and say, you know what? Yeah, if you've got data, bring it to me. And there were times he'd say, listen, this was a 4-hour meeting. I couldn't make any headway. We have to just go with this. And then I could cry and vent to myself about it, but move forward. Sometimes it's got to be an honest thing. This cannot be changed. It's from the CEO. I am many people lower than the CEO. We've got to move forward. This is just the way it is. Unfortunately, that's capitalism at its finest. Carrie Ann, anything you want to jump in with?
Yeah, I just wanted to what you're just sharing, Kristen, that I think sometimes we need to step back, and as much as it's probably more work and it feels that way, I think it's worth it. What's our internal PR plan, right? Because sometimes what we're experiencing as communication professionals is not necessarily a performance issue. It really is, do we see our internal stakeholders as an audience that needs to be onboarded in a way that requires our own PR plan to get to them so they understand our purpose, they understand the value we bring, we're aligned around goal setting and objectives. We really do need to do that. I mean, we do a great job of doing it to our other constituents as part of our regular job of being internal comms professionals in an organization, talking to the people of the company. But I think we also need to look at our stakeholders in a different box that says, hey, how are we reaching out to them? Do we have a PR plan in place to get them engaged and get them on board? It's kind of a strategic way to look at how to get people to do what you want them to do. But at the end of the day, the PR, it's about positioning yourself and really getting your audience to be pulled in and attracted to and follow the direction you'd like to head into.
I
Can
think
you
it's a combination of having a, a strategy, whether you call it a PR plan, whether you call it a communication strategy. Um, Ideally one that recognizes that you've got multiple audiences rather than lumping them into a single audience, because that's one of the mistakes that's quite common in internal comms is you kind of choose a one size fits all approach and really end up satisfying no one. But the other thing is you've got to have the plan, and you've got the ability, you have to have the agility to adjust that plan when it encounters, whether it's changes in the environment, global crises, or changes in the pressures facing certain leaders. Stakeholder, like for example with the tech bust, it's like leaders were operating as if they could they could generate um, funding on the basis of, say, 1 million a year in revenue. Now the same funding requires 5 million a year in revenue. And so the whole calculation of the way things are done in the business changes as a result of that. And you've got to have the agility to be able to adjust to that while at the same time being true to what the organization is trying to do.
We've got less than 10. Oh, go ahead, Jamie, before I go into my next thing.
I think the idea, I really liked what you said about like approaching things as a battle and just like digging into that for a moment more. I feel like, we get this in marketing, it's very much the same, but offering or like suggesting an idea or offering like, an opinion, and that not being taken is not a loss. Like you didn't fail because it wasn't accepted. It's like when I spoon feed my toddler or give him a new food, it's like, I will offer it to you and it is up to you to accept it or not, but I did not fail.
Please, everyone, now when you're sharing an idea with your CEO, please imagine yourself spoon feeding smashed peas to your CEO to see if they accept it.
I drew that parallel. We'll just keep that.
I love it. I think it's a great parallel.
We'll keep that. We'll keep that in the room. But yeah, and the other thing, and Kristen, I think this came up too at the Ecology Flyover Festival, but the idea of being a storyteller and using that for your own like internal PR to your own advantage, keeping I think I heard it called a smile file. And just like when you're getting replies to a piece of internal communications, or you're getting like direct messages, screenshotting that, resharing those in public channels and public emails and newsletters, and just being able to like kind of constantly tell the story of like, this had impact, whether it was for this one employee or whether the open rate was like skyrocketed, like being able to share those things and kind of do your own like PR and storytelling, like that will also continue to help kind of raise your reputation as well.
That's a great tangible takeaway. A little smile file. I had a good vibrations wall. Now that was back when the physical office days, So in our last 7 minutes, I want to hear from each of you. What is your most practical, helpful tip for folks who are struggling to become more confident communicators? What is one thing that they can start doing today to help them build that confidence muscle?
I'd say what worked for me, if I may,
Please.
get a coach.
Great
Get a
advice.
coach. I know for me, more than any course I would have ever done or school I would have gotten, when I got a coach, that helped me, first of all, to become more self-aware about my strengths, my areas that I still needed to work on, and how I could leverage my strengths to my advantage as a professional. It was invaluable. An executive coach or a personal coach or a business coach, anybody who helps you to be better like that you can work with, highly recommend.
100%. I will echo that as well. Mike, thoughts from you?
Well, I mean, there's a lot one can do, but I think if you're trying to do something quick and tangible, and even tactical for that matter, one thing that I'd look at is switching the focus away from magic numbers. So like in organizations, you got employee engagement scores, ENPS scores, like these big aggregate numbers that are seen as measures of organizational health. And what I'd say is set those aside for a moment and start asking what I'd call the magic question. What are the top 3 priorities facing your organization? and ask it of as many people as often as you can, whether it's formally, whether it's through survey, whether it's offhand in conversations you're having with people, because the more you can demonstrate that there's a disconnect between what the organization is trying to accomplish and what people think the organization is trying to accomplish, that solidifies your role as a communication professional, and that puts you in much more control over how you can influence the organization and getting all on the same page.
Love it. I also find it so funny that you're right. There's often a gap between what the organization is trying to do and what everyone thinks the organization is trying to do. If you have tips for confidence, pop them in the chat, because then people can read your tips as well. Jamie, do you have a tip to leave folks with for building confidence?
I would say you could start just with your strengths. I think and this happens in marketing and communications. I think you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be perfect in every channel and every forum available to you, but just focus on one, like wherever. You don't have to be amazing at writing and video and audio and like every possible platform and email and the internet and Slack and Teams and share. Like, you don't need to do it all. Just kind of, take a look at where you can have the most impact, focus there, and just build up your confidence in one space, rather than just approaching that whole to-do list tomorrow and being like, I need to be at 100% in all of these categories.
Yep. We can't all be as perfect as Jamie in every aspect.
No.
Here's my tip. Hold, please. Buy yourself a crown and wear it all the time. I bought this for myself. And it works wonders. So this is my confidence tip. I'm being a little bit joking, but also not. Like, it's not a fake it till you make it. Okay. I'm not telling anybody, don't fake confidence, but like, when we ask our leaders, like, what does success look like to you? What does confidence look like to you? Right? What does it look like? Maybe it's a crown that you bought on Amazon to make your day better. Maybe it's a feather lamp. Maybe it's a pair of new shoes. I don't know. But you're right. Kimberly says crowns are never a joke. You're right. I take my crown very seriously, okay, in this house. But for real, what does confidence look like to you? And start practicing it. Start trying it on. See what it feels like. I bet it'll be amazing. Jamie, I will let you wrap us up with any important things that we need to know before we roll into any workshop. Okay, here's how we're going to end. We have 3 minutes left. Everyone gets 1 minute. Jamie, what's the most exciting thing that's happening in workshop right now?
Oh my gosh, we're launching an editorial calendar. Am I supposed to share that?
Oh,
we're launching
insider info. You heard it here first. Mike, what is the most exciting thing happening either with We Lead Comms or changing the terms?
Well, I'll give you both. The most exciting thing with We Lead Comms is we've hit 8,000 followers.
Amazing.
The most
Congratulations.
with changing the terms is I've relaunched the blog, the Changing the Terms blog, which is now live at www.changingtheterms.com.
Phenomenal. We'll pop that link in the chat. Carrie Ann, what is the most exciting thing happening for you? Maybe internal marketing podcast or whatever you want to share.
I was muted. So while I mentioned I'm in season 4, I just found out earlier this week that I did a post on the podcast with a recent episode on LinkedIn, and it was liked by Snoop Dogg.
No!
Snoop Dogg.
Freaked out. They were so excited.
So I was like, okay, my week is made. Yeah. I can pack it up and go home now.
Here's the crown. Do you want to wear it? Like,
I have one back here. I just can't reach it. Yeah. So
that's it.
Super excited.
I can't top that.
I'm good.
Right. Carrie Ann, you should retire now because like this is the top.
Yeah,
Snoop Dogg.
There you go. Amazing things. Thank you everyone for being here with us. What a fun webinar this was. I hope everyone got some practical tips. There were a bunch of questions that we did not get to. We would have had to have a 6-hour webinar to get to all of the questions. I'm sure everyone on the screen is more than happy to be connected on LinkedIn or followed on LinkedIn. Ask questions. Thank you, Jamie and Workshop, for hosting this fun little adventure we all had. Yeah, thumbs up for Workshop.
Of course. I'll send the recording and everybody's links. Anything that was referenced today, everyone's LinkedIn. I'll make sure to follow up with all of that as well via email. And let me know if there are any topics you would like us to cover in future webinars in the chat too.
Love it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Cheers.